great to see. I attended some meetings this morning with both the Senate Dems, the Senate Republicans, and I'd say they're 90% on the same page. There's draft text being shared back and forth between both parties. Both sides want to get this done. That last 10%, there's a couple remaining issues open, like, for instance, DeFi. We want to make sure that we're pushing to protect DeFi and all the innovation potential that can have, and that the centralized intermediaries in crypto, like Coinbase, should be regulated, not the protocols. And then, of course, we're making sure to preserve stablecoin rewards for you as well. The big banks are coming for their cash grab, trying to block that, even though it was just recently decided in the Genius Act, which just recently became law. We're not going to let them relitigate that. So with these last few issues getting wrapped up, we're hoping to see this bill come out of committee by Thanksgiving. That would be a great outcome. Fingers crossed. We're going to keep showing up for your rights, and we'll keep you updated. Thanks.
Hello? 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 Damn. Hello, hello? Can you all hear me now? Hello, GeoNet in the house. All right, we got it. Oh, guys, I'm still in St. Louis. I'm not on my normal setup, so my mic wasn't registered. Here we go. We're good to go. Guys, Brian Armstrong saying that we're 90% of the way to the market structure bill being passed, and they're hopeful to have it on the president's desk around Thanksgiving. That would be absolutely massive. If you remember, last year we saw the fear and greed index actually top out around Thanksgiving. We saw that big run up in alts. So it'd be interesting timing if we saw something similar again. There's some other major catalysts though, and there's actually some correlation that is flashing some alt season indicators. We're going to cover today something we haven't covered before this. Very interesting stuff there. We've got Trump that's talking like right now. We'll see what Trump has to say. I'm going to go through some of the news that potentially could be covered in that session with his announcements, why we could see QE starting a lot sooner than we expected, or at least a lot of people were expecting. So we'll cover that report as well. We're also going to cover the 375 AI TGE. So some big news around that today. Obviously, CZ as well getting pardoned. Mixed feelings about that. So we'll touch on that as well. But the big news, obviously, the pressing news right now is that we have Trump speaking right now. So we're going to see how markets are reacting throughout the show today and what they could potentially be covering. One of the things in particular is the Russian sanctions on oil. So this is a pretty big deal. This is something that broke last night. I think markets started to react negatively at first, but it says that Donald Trump could ratchet up sanctions against Russia's oil sector with an expected global surplus of crude next year, leaving the U.S. room to escalate while insulating American drivers from price shocks. So in other words, they're expecting consumption could be down. So this shouldn't impact prices too much. It says that they announced sanctions against two of Russia's largest oil exporters. In particular, digging into this on another article here, says that these two account for roughly half of Russia's more than 4 million barrels of exports per day. Check this out, though. China imports 2 million of those. India, 1.6. So almost all of Russia's exports right now are going to China and India. And as we know, Trump is meeting with China later this month, actually next Thursday, in about a week. And there's also reports, I covered it yesterday, that India could be striking a deal with the U.S. where they would curb their purchases of oil from Russia. So this obviously would have a huge impact on Russia and would likely be the beginning of the end when it comes to the Ukraine conflict. So this would obviously be a big deal on the geopolitical side of things. We have seen, on the daily, oil prices are up a bit. It's still pretty low, guys. When you look at over the course of the last year, I mean, it is definitely down. And of course, we saw earlier this week oil prices, or gas prices rather, on from a nationwide basis, drop below $3 on average. So obviously now it would be the time to do it, if any. Of course, it does have a very direct correlation with CPI tomorrow. Tomorrow we are getting the CPI numbers. There's some mixed sentiment around what those numbers are going to look like. The market's very split. Bessent made some comments yesterday that people started kind of freaking out about. He said that CPI might be coming down next month or the month after. And I think a lot of people took that as shit. The numbers are going to come in hot tomorrow. And that is not good for markets because, again, we have the FOMC meeting coming up next week. If we look at the prediction markets, it is very split, y'all. Like, all eyes are going to be on CPI tomorrow. Will Trump hint at something today in his conference? We'll see. But right now, there's a 44% chance that we're at 3% on an annual inflation metric, 13% at 2.9, only 39% at 3.1. And that's what economists are expecting is 3.1. That's what the market's expecting. So if we come in at 3% or lower, I think we will see some major rallies in markets. In Kalshi, we're going to start looking at both because both are really gaining momentum now. Above 2.9%, at 87% chance, above 3%, so 3.1%, 50% chance. So again, very mixed feelings about what to expect tomorrow. If we see below 3.1%, that would be very good for markets. And of course, that coincides with next week. So we are just, what was today, the 23rd. So we're 5 days away from the FOMC meeting that's coming up next week. CPI numbers are going to have to be a big factor here, not necessarily on the rate cut. I think a 1/4 point cut is what is expected. And as you see here on poly market odds, same thing. I mean, this is what we've been expecting all along, 96%. The big deal is going to be around QT and QE, quantitative tightening versus quantitative easing, okay? And this was a really interesting report that just came out today, actually. So JP Morgan and Bank of America are now saying they expect the Fed to halt the reduction of its $6.6 trillion balance sheet this month, okay? Bringing an early end to quantitative tightening. And this would be a lot earlier than expected. Most people really were expecting December or January. Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, made comments last week that we could see QT ending in the coming months. Well, we're expecting now with JP Morgan and Bank of America, I think this is one of the reasons why markets are rallying today. They're saying they could expect Jerome Powell to end QT as early as next week at the FOMC meeting. And that would be very bullish for markets. We're going to talk about that a little bit more here in some of the metrics and what that could mean for alt season, okay, and for the crypto markets. Now, the other thing is China. The China conflict, obviously, I think we all know that caused a big sell-off recently. Well, this is what the press secretary had to say about the meeting between Trump and Xi, which is now confirmed.
On Thursday morning local time, President Trump will participate in a bilateral meeting with President Xi of the People's Republic of China before departing to return home to Washington, D.C.
So it is going to happen, okay? What will happen in that meeting? There are reports emerging today. Trump said, we'll make a deal with China on everything. There's going to be soybeans in there. We've talked a lot about our soybean farmers recently. They've stopped buying soybeans back in May. That'll be, I'm sure, be part of the deal. We've been threatening, cutting off software sales. They've been, threatening rare earth minerals. We've got a lot of posturing, but the expectation right now, I think the market's starting to kind of cool off a little bit from the sense of not freaking out about this meeting. I think that we could see some good things come out of this meeting, and that would obviously be very welcome for markets. So we'll have to see what happens there. And some other news, and this is a freaking huge deal. Mortgage rates have fallen to their lowest point in more than a year, with the 30-year falling to 6.19%, 15-year at 5.44%, and obviously the 10-year also below 4%. This is a really big deal. If we can see the 10-year come down, that opens up the economy in a lot of different ways. You can start to see businesses get access to capital, start maybe hiring again. So this is a really big deal, guys, the 10-year coming down. And it also means that we could see QE earlier. So, this is the foreign holders of our debt. China is really the only one that's been unloading our debt. If you see Japan, UK, they have been increasing their holdings of our long-term debt. And I thought this is a really good take. This guy is pretty sharp, man. I would recommend following him. And he made this prediction all the way back in December of last year. But he was talking about the Fed is actually holding a very low level of treasuries relative to total supply. So basically what he's saying is, foreign holders as a percentage of our total holders have risen quite a bit. And the Fed itself is not holding a large percentage. We're starting to see kind of a liquidity crunch in our banking system. This would lead to the Fed increasing their balance sheet. In other words, this would also be another indicator the Fed is going to start quantitative easing and starts buying up treasuries again and pushing liquidity into markets. It's very, very good for crypto and risk on assets. So another indicator that this could be coming. That's freaking huge news, guys. And I'm going to show you one of the indicators too that's flashing right now that I haven't covered before. I've covered a little bit, but not the same way that's showing up in this chart today. Now, going over to the crypto side of things, the big news of the day, CZ has been pardoned. Obviously, there's some mixed feelings about this. Is it a good look? One of the things I think we need to keep in mind looking longer term is we want crypto to succeed past the next 3 years, guys. And some of the stuff that's taking place could be of concern, if we have a changing of the guard as far as, if a Democrat wins the election next time around. Are they going to go after crypto because of some of the stuff that's taking place? And this is not, in my opinion, a great look, but it says that, Binance founder CZ, who had previously pled guilty to enabling money laundering while heading the cryptocurrency exchange, has now been pardoned. It says it comes 2 months after Wall Street Journal reported that the Trump's family's own crypto venture, which has generated about $4.5 billion since the 2024 election, has been helped by a partnership with an under-the-radar trading platform quietly administered by Binance. And this is true. If you look at World Liberty Financial, they originally launched their stablecoin on Binance, on the smart chain. So, in my opinion, not a great look. Now there's clamors for potentially SBF being pardoned. And if you look at this, meme coin for SBF, it rallied today. So I think the markets are starting to maybe look at, is SBF going to be pardoned? I think that would not be a great look either. So I don't know if that's a good idea. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, guys, Bitcoin back over $110,000. Love to see it. I think, we'll see over the next, we're 15 minutes into Trump's speech. I don't know what he's saying over there, but obviously we haven't seen anything like plummet. So that's a good sign. We see Solana's been making a move back up over $190, and Ethereum though. So Ethereum, this is a really important one to cover. I think for us to really see alt season, we need to see Ethereum break back above to new all-time highs. In particular, if we see Ethereum break above 5,000, that's a pretty big move. I think we could really see a full-blown alt season. And things can change very quickly, obviously. One of the things, though, I want to talk about here, And this has to do with really quantitative easing and risk appetite. And in particular, some parallels with the stock market. And I have brought this up before, the correlation with small cap stocks and crypto investments. And in particular, the Russell 2000, which is your smaller caps, mid-sized caps in the stock market. We see a really strong correlation with that in Ethereum and alts, really. And generally speaking, when we see quantitative easing or loosening of federal or fiscal policy, that's when we see Russell 2000 break out. And we have recently seen Russell 2000 hit new all-time highs. Well, if you look at this too, over the course of the past 6 months, Russell's up 30%. One of the things that was called out today, and I recommend following Sistine Research. He's a pretty sharp guy. He had some big winners over the last couple of years that he picked out. I'll give you a couple examples. He called virtuals before the major run up at the end of last year. He called gold, silver, and precious metals in their run. A number of really good calls from Sistine. He talks about the this correlation to the IWM, that's the Russell 2000, versus ETH. You can see there is very strong correlation here, which again we've seen before. Same with Doge. So we're seeing a lot of strong correlation with the Russell 2000 and a lot of alts. One of the things, though, I hadn't really thought about is the average market cap of a company in the Russell 2000 is around 5 billion. The median size is 1 billion. That is very similar to what we see in really the top 100 alts. Okay, so it kind of makes sense that they would mirror each other to an extent. If you see the risk appetite increasing, which is generally what you need for the Russell 2000 to move up. Well, if you have similar market caps for those alts, it would make sense that that risk appetite would flow over. But this chart is something I've never seen before, and this is the Russell 2000 against the S&P 500, and this is pretty shocking. So it says here that this correlation, the IWM against the S&P 500, has been in a bear market since 2021, which was effectively when we saw the last bull run for alts. Okay, last alt season. And he says here, we won't see this until the IWM outperforms. And if you look at this chart, we just hit support that we haven't seen since back in 2001. And we just broke out of this level right here. And he's saying that we could potentially right now be seeing a breakout in this ratio for the first time since 2001. And if we see this breakout, we could see their first alt season, our first real alt season since 2021. This is the last time we saw the Russell 2000 break out against the S&P 500. In other words, seeing small and mid cap stocks outperform the really large cap stocks, in the traditional financial markets. And that's a clear sign that risk appetite's coming back, which would make sense if we're seeing rate cuts and we're seeing quantitative easing begin. Okay, so that's a really good indicator, I would say, for a potential alt season. You also have Elio Trades, who, he hasn't called everything right. I'll say I was in the same camp as him earlier this year. We thought that alt season was going to happen. I wasn't paying enough attention to the fear and greed index, frankly. This year has been a really big learning experience, I think, for a lot of us. But he did say here that the Fed is about to formally end QT. The last time this happened, others, altcoins, bottomed against Bitcoin and began a historic 750% rally. He thinks the pain is over. Could we see, if you see here, could we see this breakout now that we're seeing the end of QT? And again, well, let's read the rest of what he says here. He said, it's too soon to throw in the concept of the 4-year market cycle. Okay. I did cover earlier this week how Arthur Hayes thinks it's over. Also how Raoul Powell said that he thinks the 4-year market cycle is over and is going to be extended because of the global liquidity cycle and business cycles. He said, from a macro point of view, the last time this happened was actually in 2019. This is another piece of evidence that things may be way more bullish a year from now than maybe we would have assumed. And we're no longer fighting the Fed. Okay, so all of this, if you piece all this together, CPI is really important tomorrow, obviously. Okay, the FOMC meeting next week is very important. Obviously, I don't expect a 50 basis point cut. I think a quarter point cut, just what we can see. the big thing to be watching for is Jerome Powell going to announce the end of quantitative tightening and potentially the beginning of quantitative easing? If that happens, I think we are in store for potentially a major rally through the end of this year. Obviously, next Thursday is also when the China meeting is happening. So we have a lot happening over the next week. And I think we could see markets react very favorably to some of this news that's coming out. So I would say that's pretty damn exciting. If we look at DPIN on the daily, we're seeing some moves. Look at helium up there. What have we been talking about since that announcement on Saturday? That we are expecting potentially a great decoupling. Are we starting to see that move? That's the question. And all of this happening, guys, while the fear and greed index is still at a 25. It updates once a day. Okay, so it'll update in a few hours from now. Well, it says in 0 hours and 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Let's see when it actually will update here. In 4.5 hours, it'll update again. Will we still be in a fear or not? That's the question. Some of that might have to do with what Trump says in his announcement. That I think he's still speaking right now. Okay, let's talk about 375 AI, guys. So they announced their airdrop portal is live. You can go to this link, put in your wallet address, and you can see how many tokens you're eligible for at TGE. So pretty freaking awesome. If you go to the website, they also now have a tick down for their official TGE 5 days, 15 hours, 36 minutes and counting. So guys, we are just 5.5 days away from the 375 AI TGE. Very exciting stuff there. And here's an example of what this looks like. So this is from our good friend Deep in Crypto Network with CertaStrike. He'll be on the happy hour with us later tonight. You have the option here. So you'll be able to see, you can do an instant claim. You can lock up for 6 months and get a 50% boost. Or if you lock up for 12 months, you can double your token rewards essentially. So you have the option of what you want to do there. Again, that is live. So you put in your wallet address, you can see, how many tokens you're eligible for if you've been using the 375 AI app, mobile app. Some other interesting stuff, though, around 375 AI, and you probably haven't seen this anywhere. It's because my Unchained Quant, you know who you are. I'm not going to call you out directly, but he found some on-chain activity with the EAT token. That's the 375 AI token. It looks like, guys, when they launch, they're going to have a Kraken token listing, as well as potentially a Bybit token listing at TGE based on-chain activity that we're seeing. Sounds like they're going to have a couple centralized exchange listings as well. Obviously, that's one of the beautiful things about having a public blockchain. You can track these sorts of things before they're actually announced. So that would be pretty exciting stuff. So very soon, man, very soon, 375 AI is coming. I covered a bunch. Actually, I'll pull that up later, but on the stream yesterday, a bunch of other TGEs that are coming up. Guys, helium breaking out. Check it out. Over $2 now. It's great to see. I would love to see helium continue to break out. My feeling on this, and I've been talking about a lot recently, is that I think, especially if the market it continues in to be kind of in a bearish sentiment, that's when we're going to see the great decoupling. And I think we maybe are starting to see it up 15%. We're not seeing a lot of smaller caps do that right now. So could those open market buys start to have their impact here? I think so. On the other end of things, we have a little bit of a correction in Alki today, guys. This is a gift. I'm actually going to be adding to my bag here, sitting at 53, just under $54 million. I don't know who sold, but thank you. Thank you. I'll gladly buy your tokens. So I'll be expanding my position there as Alki is going to freaking melt people's faces soon. Okay. I did share this from yesterday's stream. So it's about a 6-minute video. Check it out. I covered a lot of projects in there. Here's the list, but pretty good update, I would say, across all of DPIN. Tonight, we have our DPIN happy hour. Make sure to tune in to the Deep in Happy Hour. And lastly, let's get a little look at our guy. He's building their house. He's building the house. Let's see. Check it out. The walls are going up. The walls are going up. So if you haven't tuned in the last couple of days, this is a house that's being built in Brazil. It's they created a token on pump.fun. So they're doing the live stream there of them building this house. And when the market cap, if it hits $10 million, they're going to raffle this house off to one of the token holders. For every 25,000 tokens that you hold, you get a raffle ticket. This thing's kind of been moving a little bit. It's back down, it looks like, to 78,000. And when I first covered it a few days ago, it was around 46,000. Last night, it jolted all the way up to like 115,000 market cap, back down to 78. So it's a total degen play. But shit, man, if this thing did get to a $10 million market cap, you're looking at over 100x. This is one of those things that could go viral. So we're going to keep checking in on it. I do have a bag for sure. Just see where it goes. You never know, man. You never know. Total degen play. Not a big, it's a small, very, very small, minuscule part of my portfolio. But guys, man, things are looking pretty. What's Bitcoin doing since Trump's been talking here? What are we looking at here? It's just kind of sitting there, 110, 500. I don't know. I'm about to bust over and see what he's talking about here. See if he thinks anything bullish for markets. But tomorrow, CPI print, big fucking deal. Okay, that's what everyone's going to be looking at. That's going to have, I think, a big impact on what happens in the FOMC meeting next week potentially. So let's see where things go. Appreciate you all. I think I'm actually going to be heading back to Chicago on Saturday morning now, so I might get on for a stream again tomorrow morning. All right, y'all. I will catch you all later. Have a fantastic day. See ya.